We are going to be talking about fashion trends of the Victorian era this week in class. Going off of what you've learned in history, theater, and English class, I want you to try to take the information that we're going over and apply it to the different concepts that you've learned. Also, try to think of ways that these trends are visible in today's fashion. In the 1840s, women had puff sleeves and they were often used in women's gowns. Dresses were very simple in construction and the colors were generally very pale, like taupe or light blue or dark green. In the 1840s, men wore very tight-fitting calf-length frock coats and a waistcoat or a vest over them, or underneath. A frock is just a long jacket. In the 1850s, women's petticoats were reduced and the crinoline was worn because the size of the skirts expanded. During the day, the bodice of the dress was solid, and the evening gowns had a low neckline and were worn with shawls. Men in the 1850s started wearing shirts with turnover collars, which is seen very much in today's fashion, with bow ties. The upper class wore top hats, which are a bit taller than a normal hat, and the working class wore bowler hats, which has a rounded top. You can see this in a lot of old films. In the 1860s, women's skirts became much more flat in the front and projected out more behind the women. This gives an illusion. Day dresses had wide sleeves and high necklines with lace or tatted collars, and evening gowns had low necklines and were worn with gloves or with lace fingerless mitts. In the 1860s, men began to wear wider neckties and frock coats, and these frock coats were shortened to the knee length, and the top hats briefly became a little bit taller. In the 1870s, women wore uncorseted tea gowns for informal home entertaining. Bustles were used to replace the crinoline, and that held up the skirt behind the women. They didn't need to wear that big hoop underneath the skirt to give it the shape anymore. Men in the 1870s started wearing three-piece suits. They grew in popularity as well as patterned fabrics for shirts for men's dress shirts. In the 1880s, women wore long jackets and skirts when they went out for walks or informal things, and it was generally worn with a bustle and a small hat or bonnet. In the 1880s, men wore a dinner jacket or a tuxedo, and they wore those for more relaxed formal occasions. The Norfolk jacket was used for rugged outdoors pursuits such as shooting, and men's shoes were higher with the heel. In the 1890s, women were characterized by high collars and stiff steel boning and long bodices. There weren't crinolines or bustles, and women opted for a tiny wasp waist instead. In the 1890s, men started wearing the blazer, and this was worn for sports, sailing, and other casual activities. Okay, so now where do we see these trends? You see puff sleeves in wedding dresses, and you see blazers for both men and women are very popular right now. A turnover collar for dress shirts and sweaters, long coats for women, long maxi skirts for women, and you see a bodice, a built-in bodice in a prom dress, and a tuxedo for men's formal wear.
Created using Powtoon.